I started making a cutting board and I was 90% sure it was going to fail, so I didn't set up the camera. And now I've got it partly glued up already and it's looking like it's going to work. Come on, I'll show you what I'm doing. I didn't want to make just a boring checkerboard cutting board, so I'm making it in the shape of Arizona and using different woods for all the different counties. I already have these two glued together and I successfully made this wiggly seam on a 2 1/4 inch thick piece, which was what I thought wouldn't work. You can see I'm making these out of different species of wood. I'm going to have 4 different species for the cutting board. This is maple, this is walnut. I'm also going to have alder and sapele. I've sort of started in the middle of the cutting board and I'm working my way out, just sort of adding counties onto this piece that I have in the middle. So next up I'm going to make Maricopa County, which goes right here. That's going to be made out of alder, and these alder strips are actually going to run on a 45-degree angle. So you can see the maple are running side to side, the walnut are running vertical. These will run on 45 degrees this way, and the sapele will be 45 degrees this way. So that'll help differentiate between them. There are also different widths of strips. To optimize my material usage, I'm going to cut each of these strips off and use this leftover material to build up a roughly shaped block that I can then cut the exact county shape out of. Now we can start adding the offcuts underneath here. I'm just going to glue these up 2 or 3 strips at a time and then glue all of those up into the block that the county will be cut from. This is going to be kind of tedious, but, well, if it works at all, I think the result will be cool enough to be worth it. I need to flatten this before I can do anything with it. Alright, it sits perfectly flat now, so I'm going to go ahead and draw the shape of the county onto here and then cut that out with the bandsaw. I think I'm going to go ahead and hold this down with tape so that I can draw the remainder of that. So this is obviously going to need quite a bit more work to make it fit. And when I started this project, I was planning to use the bandsaw to just nibble away at that and creep up on the line until it was perfect. That's why I have this sort of auxiliary table trying to get it square to the blade. But I think this blade just wanders too much. I couldn't ever get it right with that. So I switched to sanding it. So this is my belt grinder. This was built for metalworking, but it kind of works for woodworking occasionally. It doesn't have any dust collection, but it sort of works. And it's a lot easier to square it between the table and the platen than it is to square a bandsaw. Getting closer. So this is really just a process of grinding off whatever point is touching until finally everything is touching the same amount, if that makes sense. Alright, that was just lots of back and forth to the sander, sort of trial and error, but I've got a gap that's small enough the glue will fill that. So when that's done, you won't really see any voids. Earlier, when I was using the bandsaw, I could achieve a similar fit to this, but on the back side it would have huge gaps because it wasn't square. And this machine is enough more square that there's no gaps in the back. Before I make this permanent and glue this together, I need to make sure I have any surfaces in here that I can't reach later sanded true. So for example, I'm not going to be able to sand this surface after the fact. There's no way to get to it. So I can sand that one, can't sand that, and I'm not going to be able to sand that little edge either. Okay, we're ready to glue this up. There are a few minor gaps, and I want to make sure that those get filled with glue. So I'm going to put glue on both surfaces just to be sure there's enough to cover everything. So now we need to flatten both sides again, and this is why I'm starting with it pretty thick, because it's going to get thinner as I do that. I figured out the correct amount of shim to put under one edge, so like that it will sit flat. Okay, I've got it sitting flat on the table now, so we're going to move on to Pinell County. Now I don't want to bore you with repetition. All the rest of the county is going to be the same process, so let's just speed through the rest of the cutting board. Turns out glue has a lot better holding power than tape. If you're curious, this cutting board is to scale, so every inch is 32 miles. So if you have a ruler that reads in 30 seconds, then that will read in miles on this cutting board. To be able to clamp this piece, I'm going to tape my offcut back on. So I'm kind of skipping ahead here because the video is getting long, but I just made this sub-assembly. I think I should have been making more sub-assemblies because this works pretty good. So these two will also be a sub-assembly, and probably these two. But now I'll just add this as one block onto the rest of this. Well, that was a lot of work, but all the parts are glued together and flattened. So now I just need to true up the outside edges, maybe do a little edge treatment, and that's about it. So here I'm using a 2-mile radius roundover bit to just ease the edge a tiny bit. Oh look, it's raining in the desert.